Being at the forefront of one of the most technologically advanced sports in the world should be a recipe for success. But becoming complacent with dominance is often the trend in Formula 1, and one team's story shows the danger of not acting on these issues, to the point where your team becomes the laughingstock of the sport. The 1977 Spanish Grand Prix marked the entry of a team running a March car driven by Patrick Neve, and although they didn't make an impact in this race, this would be the beginning of Williams racing. And much like my probation officer says, you have to make small steps in the right direction. So despite finishing 4 laps down in this race, it would keep pushing the team to start building their own Grand Prix cars for 1978, and it wouldn't be long in 1979 until Clay Regazzoni would bring founder Frank Williams and the rest of the British team their first Grand Prix win. This was the start of a huge period of success for Williams. By 1980, they showed that despite being only 3 years into their F1 journey, they weren't messing around. And Alan Jones would become the first World Drivers' Champion that year, with the Aussie beating out Nelson Piquet to the title. Then in 1982, the father of a certain Monaco-based YouTuber would take another world title for Williams. However, this season was scarred with tragedy for Williams' rivals. Ferrari lost Gilles Villeneuve, and their other driver Didier Pironi suffered a huge crash that left him out for the rest of the season. But still, Williams were there to pick up the points and take home a further title. Throughout the rest of the mid-80s, Williams would always be fighting near the front of the field, and 87 saw the title fight take place between their 2 drivers, Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell. Things got heated and racing was close. Crashes occurred and insults were thrown, mostly by Nelson Piquet if you haven't seen my other video. It reminds me of a YouTube comments section, but in the end, the drivers and constructors title went to the British team. Without debate, the 90s would become Williams' most dominant period in F1. In fact, the machinery was top-notch, but often they struggled to find the right drivers to fit it. If Max Verstappen had been around then, I'm sure this period would have been a lot more boring. But the team had champions in Mansell and Prost leaving after their championship wins, and then when they seemed to lock in Ayrton Senna, he would tragically pass away during the Imola incident. This did to an extent lead to Williams losing out on what should have been for them 2 world titles for the next 2 years. In 1994, straight after Senna's crash, Damon Hill narrowly missed out to Schumacher, and in 1995, many believe the mental struggles that Hill was suffering from Ayrton Senna's crash and Schumacher totally not crashing into him on purpose meant that Williams were pushed out of the championship fight that year too. But 1996 and 97 would be a return to form. They won back-to-back championships with Hill and everyone's favorite Canadian pop icon, who also won an F1 world title, Jacques Villeneuve. Truly, he was the Charles Leclerc of his time. I'm sure from here, Williams assumed they'd continue to be at the top level in Formula 1, but they wouldn't be able to predict what happened next. Sure, they stayed near the front of the field for a while into F1's future. 2003 would be the next shot they had at an F1 championship, with Ferrari's reigning champ Michael Schumacher, McLaren's Kimi Raikkonen, and Williams' Juan Pablo Montoya making it a 3-way fight for WDC success. But it would all go wrong for Montoya in the second to last round of the season. He'd start the race slow, and with rain imminent, needed to make up positions, as Schumacher's Bridgestone tyres were better suited for the wet race. When trying to make a risky pass on Barrichello, however, Montoya made contact and pushed Rubens off into the gravel, and for this, he'd be penalised with a drive-through penalty. It all went downhill from there. Despite recovering to third at one point, a fuel nozzle issue led to a slow stop, and he plummeted down the order. At the end of the race, he finished 6th, taking 3 points in comparison to Schumacher, who scored 10 for the race win. This mathematically dropped him from the title fight. From there, you'd never really say Williams stood a chance at winning a world title again. They'd fallen well and truly into F1's midfield. Sure, the latter years would provide some success. A win with Maldonado became Williams' most recent victory in Spain 2012, which if you think about it, is actually older than your average Team LH fan. And in 2014 and 15, Williams would be comfortably the 3rd best team, locking in many podiums with Valtteri Bottas and Felipe Massa. Even in 2017, Lance Stroll took a step on the podium, podium, this being at the race in Baku. But from 2018 and onwards, things really changed. They brought terrible car after terrible car, scoring only 7 points in the 2018 season, finishing last in 2019 and 20, with 1 point and 0 points in each respective year. I've had to double check I'm not reading out my sim racing record here, but things were genuinely bad, so what changed? Well, I believe Williams grew complacent. In the 80s and 90s, they were known for pushing the boundaries of an F1 car, whether it be trying to create a 6-wheeled ground effect monster, which sadly never saw a race, or using a revolutionary active suspension system that again would have to be banned along with other driver aids. But they also hired a man who, if you have on your F1 team, basically guarantees you're gonna go fast. Yes, it's Adrian Newey. Something interesting does line up when it comes to Newey as well. As discussed with Williams, their last championship was in 1997, with Newey leaving the team at the tail end of 1996. It's safe to assume the 97 car would have been one of Williams' last machines to have had much Newey influence. And this is what I mean. He left and they never won a championship again. We know from interviews with current team principal James Vowles, Williams' facilities were outdated when he arrived, and organizational issues continued to plague the team due to software limitations. Recently, there was an article saying their parts are just a big Excel spreadsheet, and they've not even been able to get 3 chassis ready for even the 3rd round of the 2024 season, which has cost them potential point-scoring opportunities. They grew complacent in the 1990s with their continued success, and the further they headed into the 2000s and the 2010s, the further behind they dropped, all while losing key sponsors along the way, especially when Martini pulled out of F1 at the end of 2018 after Williams delivered a terrible season. However, things to an extent are looking up. The team got bought by an investment firm which seemed really keen to give them the resources they need to catch up to the rest of the pack. Previously mentioned James Vowles has also been really open about where the team is at and the steps that they need to take to bring it forward. Unfortunately, I don't think we can be overly optimistic about Williams yet. They're still struggling near the back of the grid for now, picking up small points finishes where they can. They're no longer the worst team on the grid. They've certainly improved to be ahead of some of the other back markers, but this 2024 year, it does seem Haas has taken more of a fight to them. We'll have to see how that goes over the full season though. Things are not where they need to be if they want to get closer to someone like Aston Martin at the moment, but with continued efforts, they're set off on the right path. I do believe there's hope for Williams, and I really hope we see them challenging the big teams like they did back in the 80s and 90s. But if you want to see more F1 content, then hit the subscribe button, and thank you for all the support. I appreciate it a lot. Goodbye!